everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Samantha, and as you can see by the title of today's video, I'm going to be talking about breastfeeding. So breastfeeding can be one of the most beautiful journeys that you experience as a new mom, or it could be absolutely horrendous. For me, fortunately, it was not horrendous, but it definitely wasn't as enjoyable as I thought it could be. But I do feel like there's a lot that I didn't know and a lot that I didn't really fully understand going into it. So in this video, I'm just gonna be talking about all the things that I learned, different things that I experienced, and hopefully a lot of this can help some of you new moms or expecting moms out there. So I'll go over things like prepping for breastfeeding, so things you can do or get before birth, how to get started with pumping and all the things you may need for that, how to establish and increase your milk supply, how to store your breast milk, and just other random tips and things that are related to breastfeeding. To preface, a lot of this can apply to moms who are exclusively breastfeeding or pumping or both. So this is not just for exclusively breastfeeding moms, it's not just for pumping moms. So a lot of this will overlap for both categories. So if this seems like something that interests you or may apply to you or benefit you in any way, let's get into it. So the first thing I'll say, whether you're exclusively breastfeeding or pumping, is to get a pump. I just feel like this is really useful whether you're bottle feeding or choosing to exclusive breastfeed, because if there's ever a situation where you as an exclusively breastfeeding mom, you're feeling sick or unwell in some sort of way, or maybe you're dropping the baby off with a sitter or a grandparent or something of that sort, I just feel like with exclusively breastfeeding, it's just really hard because you will literally be attached to your baby all the time. And for most new moms, most likely you are going to be attached to your baby pretty much 24/7, especially in the early months. But there will be times maybe you need to take an extra nap and maybe dad can feed baby with a bottle. So I just feel like it's just really nice to have. It doesn't need to be like your go-to when it comes to feeding your baby, but it could be really useful. And also you can get a breast pump for free through your insurance. So if you have insurance, why not take advantage of that? I don't know if it applies to all insurances, but I will link below the website that I went to register for that. But you can call your insurance as well to see if they offer that and what the process is to get that. And you want to make sure that you get a hospital grade pump. Usually those are a bit better with more suction. I'm not sure what is not considered a hospital grade pump or not, but I do know that I have the Spectra S2, which I do believe is considered hospital grade. I do like that pump. I kind of wish that I got the S1 because that one is wireless, but my insurance was making me pay a difference for that and I didn't want to pay it, which is something else to note. Your insurance may cover certain pumps, not all of them, and then certain ones that they don't cover, they may have you pay like an additional fee or difference for that pump. It might also be useful to have a hand pump or a manual pump. So something that I liked was the Haka, which I would use when I was actually breastfeeding my baby. And sometimes if I was pumping on one side, I would just use it on the other side and it would just catch like any extra leakage. So it's really useful for that. I did also have a hand pump from Medela, but I didn't really use it and I didn't really like it. I honestly don't think I ever really got the hang of using it. So it was kind of pointless for me, but I do know that some people really like it. I've seen a lot of people on TikTok and Instagram using it, so that could be really useful as well, but there's a bunch of others, so you really just have to do your research. So the next thing you want to get are comfortable nursing bras or comfortable nursing tank tops that probably have like a built-in bra or bralette kind of situation. Most likely you will leak. I do know some women don't leak as much as others, but I feel like it is really common to experience leakage. So nursing bras are really good with that, and they're really easy to use, especially if you are breastfeeding and pumping. You just unsnap them and pull the boob out and do whatever you have to do, versus having like a full top on or like the regular bras that snap in the back and they don't detach. I feel like you could still use them, but it's just not going to be really convenient. So getting like a good set of nursing bras is really nice. I'll link the ones that I had down below so you guys can grab you some if you want, or maybe just get an idea of what kind of nursing bras you may like. You might also want to get reusable or disposable breast pads. I like the reusable ones because I felt like they were more absorbent and I feel like you can reuse them, so it's not as much of a waste. And you can reuse them, so I feel like it's not as much of a waste. The disposable ones just weren't as comfortable in my opinion, and they weren't as absorbent, but maybe it was just the ones that I had. Another thing you might want is nipple butter or some kind of nipple cream to really help soothe that area, because it's something that your body has never done before, especially your nipples. It's not used to being pumped or breastfeeding, so they may become cracked and really dry and really sore, so that will really help soothe. Some cooling gel pads could be really useful as well, to really help soothe. They don't really stay cool for that long if you're using them, but it does give you some like temporary relief from my experience. You might want to get a breast massager, but you can massage manually with your hands. Like, you don't really have to get a breast massager, but I just found that it was really useful because the one that I had different levels and vibrations and things like that, and you kind of just go across the area underneath and everything, and it kind of just helps, you know, with like engorgement and clogged milk ducts, and like, you know, really helping the blood flow, especially during the time that you're pumping, but also before you breastfeed and before you pump. It really helps get things like, you know, loosened in there and, you know, help you get as much as you can. A nursing pillow might also be good. I didn't really use mine. I had the Nurse It brand, which I actually have just on the floor right now. My daughter she doesn't even really use it. It's just on the floor and she kind of just crawls on it sometimes. But I do hear really good things about the Boppy and the My Breast Friend. I did want the Boppy, but that's not what I ended up with, but I feel like it pretty much works the same. I just felt like a nursing pillow kind of just feels like it's in the way, but some people really like theirs. So I would say if you want to try it, get one. If you don't feel like you need it, you really could just use regular pillows, which I feel like that's kind of what I did. I just needed like a little extra support. I feel like the nursing pillow just made her too high and stuff. So, and then you might want to get some extra snacks or supplements. So before you come home from the hospital, you might also want to have some extra snacks or supplements ready. So once you get back home, you have, you know, things like lactation cookies or oatmeal and papaya and all these good things that could really help with, you know, milk production. You want to make sure that you're eating things that are said to increase milk supply. I don't know if they're scientifically proven, but oatmeal is really good for increasing or sustaining your milk supply. There are oatmeal lactation cookies that you can make. There are a lot of recipes online that you can use, or you can buy them. I used to eat the Munchkin ones, which I thought were really good. I would eat them as a regular snack, honestly. And there's other ones as well, but those have pretty good reviews, which for me, I didn't really care for like the amount of calories that were in them as a snack, but I think they were like close to 300 maybe, but they were really good. I personally did not want to make the oatmeal cookies or whatever because I was a postpartum mom and I was tired and honestly kind of lazy, so I just preferred to buy it. But if you prefer to be a little healthier than I was, then it would be nice if you could make them yourself. I do feel like it helped. I don't know how well it helped because I was doing a lot of other things and eating a lot of other things and drinking a lot of other things, so I can't really pinpoint one particular thing that helped increase my milk supply, but I did notice an increase during the time that I was eating it. And I do feel like when I would stop eating it, I would notice a dip. So, you know, take that with a grain of salt. I think they also make like other things like chips or whatever that can help with lactation, but do your research, look at the reviews and see what you might want to try, if you want to try any at all, or you can try making your own things. Or you can just keep it simple and just eat regular oatmeal. You can put a little milk, sugar, cinnamon, honey, whatever you like in it, and I think that should be fine. You don't necessarily have to make all of these extra things. Papaya is supposedly like a superfood for breastfeeding. My mom cooked unripe papayas and she served it with like meat on the side, and unripe papayas are absolutely disgusting to me. I would not recommend. I definitely would prefer to have it in a smoothie, like ripe papayas in a smoothie, or maybe, you know, like just in a fruit salad or something. But unripened papaya was just terrible to me. Maybe it's better than ripened, but I just couldn't do it. You can drink mother's milk tea, which is said to help with that as well. Coconut milk is really good as well. Body Armor is a really good thing, which I think actually has coconut milk, but it also has like electrolytes and other good hydrating things, because one of the keys to producing breast milk is being hydrated. Drink a lot of water. So you want to just make sure that you're really staying hydrated with, you know, water, coconut water, whatever, and eating foods that could be really nutritious and beneficial for creating a really good milk supply. So once you've given birth, most likely there is going to be someone there, whether it's a doula, midwife, a lactation consultant at a hospital. There's going to be somebody there who maybe assisted you with your birth, who should be able to help you with latching your baby. I'm not an expert on that, so I will link a video to Bridget Teyler here on YouTube. She does a lot of content on birthing and pregnancy and postpartum and breastfeeding and things like that. So she's a really good resource, and I think she is a certified doula, if I'm not mistaken, or midwife. I don't remember, but she's a really good source for that. I don't want to steer anyone the wrong way, because my baby honestly got the hang of it pretty early on. Like, I didn't really struggle much with her latching. She had a great latch and I didn't really have to worry much about that, but I do know some moms struggle a lot with that, so that will be there for you guys in the description box. But aside from that, the first milk that is going to come out is colostrum. So it's not really milk, it's more of a yellowy, thick, sticky substance that's really, really good for baby. Basically liquid gold, like it's really good for them. I think it's good for like their immune system and all these different things. But that is not something that you're gonna produce a lot of, especially in the early days, but it is enough to feed baby for the time being. Most babies at that stage aren't eating a lot anyway. Their stomachs are pretty much the size of a grape from what I've heard. And they're definitely gonna lose a little bit of weight once they're born, maybe within the first few days, and then they'll gain it back within the next week or two. So that happened to my baby. She was born at 8 pounds, 2 ounces, I believe. And then she dropped in weight to 6 pounds and something ounces. And then she gained it back by the second week. So, and since then she's been growing perfectly fine. So that's not something to be concerned about. During the first few days, your breast may also feel super engorged, but most likely it's just swelling. It's not actual milk. It's pretty much just your body prepping itself to start producing milk, but it may feel really, really uncomfortable, tender to the touch. So be prepared for that. Like, it'll literally probably feel like rocks on your chest compared to what you normally feel. So that's something to expect. I did not expect that, especially so soon. I think by like the next morning or something, like they were just huge and really uncomfortable. So, and at that time, again, your baby's not really eating much, so you're not gonna feel much relief after breastfeeding. And when you do start breastfeeding, normally right after you've given birth, maybe within an hour, your baby is going to try to eat, or whoever's there with you may try to help you to get the baby to latch. And it's gonna feel really uncomfortable. For me, my nipples are already sore from pregnancy. So having to breastfeed with super swollen, sore nipples, it just was really uncomfortable for me, but it had to happen. And over time, those things will go away, but initially it's not going to feel very comfortable to breastfeed. People do say that it should not hurt. I don't know if I agree with that or not, because I feel like it was kind of painful, not necessarily because of her latch, but just that suction on sore nipples hurt, in my opinion. And even if you're pumping, it might still hurt because your nipples are not used to it, your breasts are not used to it. So I don't know. Let's just say it's discomfort and not necessarily pain. I feel like at that time when my baby was latching, it felt like pinching, and then I felt like tingling from like the letdown of milk. So that's the best way I could describe it, but everyone has a different experience and that may not be your experience. But overall, once you're breastfeeding and pumping consistently, your body's gonna get used to it, your nipples will get used to it, so it won't really feel like much of anything. But I do know within those first like few days or a couple weeks, it's very uncomfortable. And this is when the nipple butter and the cooling gel pads really come in handy. So take advantage of those. See, even if the hospital may offer something that could help as well, you can see with them, or maybe your midwife or your doula may have suggestions, but there are things out there that can help soothe that area to make it a bit better. I do know that some people, like when they've gotten really engorged or experienced a lot of swelling, they've put, I think, like cabbage leaves or something to help with that. You can look more into that. I don't really know much about that. I didn't do it, but there are lots of things out there that can help with the discomfort. Now, when it comes to pumping, once you've just given birth, most likely the last thing you're thinking about is pumping, especially with your breast being incredibly sore, you're tired, you just had a baby, you experienced labor, you're not really thinking about pumping. But truthfully, as uncomfortable as I was, in hindsight, I do kind of wish I did start pumping at the hospital for multiple reasons, to kind of kickstart my milk supply, so really get that going. Even though my baby is breastfeeding and all of that, I feel like having like additional pumping sessions here and there could have really helped, get my milk to come in a lot faster. Although I wouldn't be pumping very much, I think just that motion, the sucking motion, would trigger my body to say, hey, like we need to start making this milk now. I don't feel like I was like underproducing in any way. I feel like my body was making just enough to feed my baby, but I do kind of wish that I was one of those moms who was able to pump like, you know, 8 bottles worth of milk, you know, coming right out the hospital or whatever. And I was never an oversupplier. So I just feel like I kind of wish I did do that, because I actually didn't start pumping until I think 2 weeks after she was born. And the only reason was because I feel like I was so tired and I just wasn't able to keep up with, you know, her breastfeeding sessions. And I was prepared to pump anyway. That's what I wanted to do, but I just didn't know when I would start. And I was also worried about people telling me, oh, you shouldn't introduce a bottle to your baby until 8 weeks, or even a pacifier, because you don't want them to like be confused with their latching and stuff. My baby was fine. Like, she was able to bottle feed and breastfeed normally. Her latch never changed, because if she's hungry, she's hungry, she's gonna eat. And it's not to say that other babies, you know, are not like that, but she just didn't have a problem with latching. So for me, I was fortunate enough. So I think at 2 weeks, that's when we did introduce pumping and bottle feeding. And I was probably pumping only like 1 ounce on each side per session. And then over time, it did increase to, you know, 2 ounces, 3 ounces, 4. And on good days, I would get 5 ounces from each side. Or maybe I'd get 5 ounces on one side, and then the slacker boob would give me 4 maybe. Or maybe 3, 3.5. It really depended. But in those early days, I really wasn't pumping much, but again, it was enough for what my baby was eating at the time. So in the beginning, they are only really eating like 1 ounce or maybe, you know, 2 ounces at most. And then gradually they do start eating 3 ounces, 4 ounces, and so on and so forth. Before I started pumping, I did start to feel like I wasn't producing enough. So we did supplement with formula a couple of times until we were able to store up some breast milk. In hindsight, I feel like it probably wasn't absolutely necessary. I could have just kept breastfeeding her directly to really get, you know, my milk to come in. But again, hindsight's always 20/20. And she was still gaining weight, she was still wetting her diapers, she was still pooping, so there really wasn't much of a concern. But I just felt like she wasn't getting enough, and I feel like a lot of moms struggle with that, breastfeeding moms. And it's really important to remember that your body is creating enough for your baby. Your body was made to do this. It knows you just had a baby, it's creating the milk. It's just a matter of keeping up with your breastfeeding sessions and pumping sessions, whichever one or both, to make sure that it's continuous and you're not, you know, dropping in your supply. But overall, your baby's definitely gonna get what he or she needs for the most part. And if you do choose to supplement just as an assurance, that's fine too. I know some people do formula and breast milk all throughout their journey. Some people just do breast milk, some people just do formula. It's really up to you. But yeah, so since we switched to formula, we've been using Kendamil, which is really good. I can recommend that. I can't really recommend any of the others. We did try to start her on Enfamil and she hated it. So I've heard great things about Kendamil. So far, she's loved it, and we plan on sticking with it until she's 1 year old. But I've heard great things about other ones like Aptamil, I think it is, or Bobby. That's pretty much it. I don't really know much about the others. On average, your baby will eat about 8 to 12 times a day, I think, when they're a newborn. It could be more, it could be less. It really depends on your baby. There are instances like cluster feeding where your baby will just want to eat just for the sake of eating. And I feel like cluster feeding in particular may make you feel like they're not getting enough, but it's really just them wanting to eat. It's like when you're in a snacking mood and all you want to do is snack, 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 snack. I feel like that's just what cluster feeding is, but in baby form. When you're breastfeeding or pumping, you want to make sure that they're getting fully emptied. So if you're breastfeeding your baby, you do want to make sure that you're offering both breasts. At the end of the session, both are empty. If you're not empty, then you want to make sure whichever one or both of them which are not empty, you pump out that milk, because that's what's really going to get your body used to, you know, producing more milk, because it's like, okay, I'm empty, now I got to produce more. I'm empty, now I got to produce more. So your body's basically doing a supply and demand situation. So the more that you're demanding, the more that it may start to supply. This isn't for everyone. Again, I was not an overproducer. Some women are, but I do feel like there could be an increase in how much you're producing over time if you're doing this. So most breast pumps come with 2 of the little suction thingies. And if you're going to use both at the same time, that's great. You can do a 20-minute pumping session, try to empty out and store that milk. If your electric breast pump only has 1 pump connected to it, you can just do that one side and then alternate to the other side, or you could do that one side and then have a hand pump on the other. I like to just use the Haka, and the way that I would use it is that I would squeeze it, attach it, and then like let it just sit on my boob and it would just leak out. And usually by the end of the pumping session for one side, that side was already pretty empty as well. If there was anything left, it may be like half an ounce or so, but it wasn't very much. Another reason why you want to make sure that your breasts are fully emptied is because of mastitis. So basically mastitis is when you have a clogged milk duct that won't let your breast drain the milk completely, and it causes an infection. And you can get really sick from this, like with a fever and chills and other symptoms. So you can feel very inflamed, very engorged, warm to the touch, very sensitive, and just overall very uncomfortable. There are ways to help clear that up and different remedies, and to clear it up within a week or 10 days or something, but it is something to be cautious of that it doesn't happen. So making sure that they're fully empty is a way to kind of take preventative measures for that, even though I think it could still happen regardless. So storing your breast milk. So if you're pumping, most likely your goal is to pump enough to store your milk over time. You may store days worth, weeks worth, or even months worth. Some people store up to a year's worth. It really depends. So breast milk in the fridge is good for up to 24 hours. Breast milk that's in the freezer is good for up to 6 months, and breast milk that's in a deep freezer is good for up to a year, I believe. And even after those extended periods of time, once you unfreeze it, it should be good to drink, but you can use breast milk for a myriad of different things. So you could be storing it for, baths. I know some people put their breast milk in their baby's bath water, and I did that as well when my baby had like a rash like on her neck and face. It was very mild, but I did add breast milk to the water to kind of help with that and help clear it up, which I think over time it did help. I know when some babies are teething, some parents like to put frozen ice cube shaped breast milk into a little teething pacifier, and the baby can just chew on that, and it's really good and cooling on their gums. Even if your baby's lips are dry, you can just add a little breast milk, use that as a natural chapstick for your baby. Some people like to freeze their breast milk so they can make little snacks with it, or put it in their baby's food. There are a lot of things you can do with it. Breast milk is called liquid gold, so storing it for the future for whatever you may use it for is very advantageous. And you also want to make sure that you get containers to store your breast milk, so little containers or jars. So after a pumping session, you're putting your breast milk into the fridge in a container. If you are gonna use a jar or a pitcher of some sort, make sure that you're not mixing room temperature breast milk or freshly pumped breast milk with refrigerated milk, because it could cause some issues with bacteria or something. So if you have a batch of breast milk that's already in the fridge, before you mix it with the fresh breast milk or the room temp breast milk, make sure that you refrigerate that as well. I know some people really like the Dr. Brown's pitcher. Some people like to use mason jars, really large mason jars, to put their breast milk in the fridge. You can use whatever works for you. I didn't use either of those. I just kept mine in little containers, which was easier for me to transfer them into a storage bag. For freezing, the storage bags that are really good are the Lancino. That's what I was using, but you can also use Medela or whatever other storage bags. They pretty much all work the same, but I do know that Lancino and Medela have really good reviews when it comes to that. Once I finished pumping, I just left it in the container as is, and I put a top on it and popped it in the fridge. At the end of the day, or 24 hours for that container, then I would transfer it into a storage bag and freeze it. Not everybody has a deep freezer or the space for a deep freezer, so your freezer may get really packed with just breast milk. So maybe you can get things like a mini freezer or mini fridge or something to kind of help out with that. When you're putting them in the freezer, make sure that you are notating on the bag what date and possibly even what time, depending on how much you care about that. I know some people care about nighttime milk and morning milk and whatever because of the sleep hormones or melatonin or whatever. I didn't really care about that. So you could put the time just for extra precaution if you want to be mindful of that, but most likely milk is milk and your baby's gonna sleep whenever they want to sleep anyway. So it really doesn't matter. And just to be mindful, if you do decide to put your breast milk in a jar, you will not be able to track the exact time for the milk because it's a mix of milk from a whole day that comes from a variety of different times. So at the end of the day, what's really important is the date, so you know exactly when you put it in the freezer and how long it's good for. And remember, if you just pumped fresh milk, you have to refrigerate it first before mixing it with milk that has already been refrigerated. So if you have milk that's in a jar or a pitcher in the fridge and you just pumped some fresh milk, do not mix it with that milk because it could cause some issues with the temperature and whatever. I'll see if I can find some information on that you guys can see. So you'll have to refrigerate that freshly pumped milk separately, and once they're the same temperature, then you can mix it. And then at the end of the day, you know, you could probably pour them into the storage bags. When storing your milk in the freezer or the fridge, you want to put it as far back as possible because you don't want the warm air or whatever hitting it whenever you open the fridge or freezer door. That can cause it to not be as cool as you'd like, which can cause some issues with its temperature. So just make sure that if you can put it as far back as possible, you do that. And overall, by 6 to 8 weeks after your baby's born, your milk should pretty much regulate to whatever it's going to produce. There are ways you can increase or decrease it over time, but at that point, your body's kind of like set on like, this is what I'm going to make for this child, unless you start telling your body otherwise that you need more milk. So some last few tips, but things that are very important, is to make sure that you are eating as balanced of a diet as you can. I know as a new mom, sometimes you forget to eat or you just eat whatever's available. But if you can eat a balanced diet, that's gonna be the most beneficial thing for both you and baby. At the end of the day, you are what you eat and your milk is what you eat. So whatever you're intaking is basically the nutrients that's going into your milk. It's not to say that like if you're eating pizza, you can't breastfeed your baby because you ate pizza, or you have to eat veggies every single meal of the day. But overall, you want to make sure that you're getting the vitamins and minerals that you need in your body as a breastfeeding mom. And obviously you want to make sure that you're limiting certain things such as alcohol, and being mindful of the fact that after you've had a drink, you have to wait at least 2 hours before you can breastfeed or pump. And if you have more than one drink, that's even longer. So it could be 4 hours, 6 hours, 8 hours. So if you're going to drink, just make sure you're being mindful of that. There are like little test strips that you can test your breast milk for like alcohol content in it. But I feel like if you just play it safe and make sure that you wait an ample amount of time after you've had a drink, you should be okay. And obviously make sure that you're not doing drugs. That's not good for you or the baby, obviously. Try to get as much sleep as you can. That's really hard and very much easier said than done with a newborn. But if you can, sleep when the baby sleeps. If somebody's offering you help, whether it's your partner or maybe your mom or sister or whoever, you know, try to see if you can accept that help. Especially if they seem like they know what they're doing and you trust them, because you having a lack of sleep is causing stress on your body, causing stress on your mental, which could definitely affect your milk supply. So make sure that you're trying to get as much sleep as you can, and literally everything else can wait. At this stage in life, the most important thing is you and your baby. So you really just have to make sure that you're focusing on you and your health as much as you're focusing on the baby as well. I would also say try not to stress too much about your milk supply. Again, at some point I felt like I wasn't producing enough and I wish I wasn't putting that much pressure on myself. But you do see like these other moms on social media saying like, oh, I produced 20 ounces in, 20-minute pump session. And it's just like, what the heck? Like, what is the difference between you and me that you're producing so much? But you just have to remember everyone's different. We're all gonna produce different amounts of milk. Some people are just blessed in that way to be overproducers, and some of us have a little bit more of a struggle. So just remember that it's a journey and there are things that you can do to help, increase your milk supply. And at the end of the day, if you're not producing this massive amount of milk, as long as your baby's fed, that's the most important thing. Whether it's your body producing just enough, or whether you're supplementing, or whether you just switch over to formula, fed baby is best. Or what's the saying? Fed is best. I know some people say breast is best, but fed is best. Like, I do believe personally that breast milk is more beneficial than formula, of course, but at the end of the day, a fed baby is your priority. But I'm not gonna lie, I do remember wanting so badly to have like a freezer full of milk. I remember even before I gave birth, just thinking I'm gonna have all this milk. We're gonna have to get like a mini freezer, you know, to put the extra milk in, and that's just not what happened. And maybe that could have happened had I stuck with this journey, but that just wasn't my reality. And at that time, I just really couldn't handle it mentally. It was taking a big mental toll on me. And that's something else I wanna touch on, because breastfeeding overall is not easy and postpartum depression is very real. So if you feel like this is something that's drastically affecting your mental health, maybe it is something to consider whether it is the best choice for you or your baby, and maybe explore other options. Again, there are things like supplementing or just switching fully to formula. And I don't think that's a cop-out, especially when it pertains to your mental health, because, you know, as a mom, you want to be the best version of yourself for your baby. So even though, you know, you're breastfeeding or you're doing all this, if you're not there mentally and you can't even really show up for your baby or yourself in the way that you would like, is it really worth it when there are other options? I'm not saying to not, you know, stay the course or to quit, but it is something to consider. Like for me, I really do feel like it was really affecting me drastically. So I stopped breastfeeding and pumping at like 4.5 months, which I know to some people is like, okay, why are you giving advice on breastfeeding if you didn't even breastfeed for 6 months or a year or whatever? Because my goal was a year. But I do feel like I still learned a lot, you know, and I could have went longer. So I'm just sharing things that I feel like could help you guys who do want to stick to your journey. And once I stopped, I'm not saying that my postpartum depression just completely went away, but it did improve. Like I will say that it did improve because I was able to get more sleep. I was able to just function a bit better and not feel as drained, because breastfeeding can be mentally and physically draining. And this is not for all women. Some women love breastfeeding. They enjoy every part of it. That was not me. And when you're tired, you're hormonal, you're a new mom trying to figure things out, it feels like a lot. And I know some women actually have negative emotions when they're pumping or even breastfeeding. So I know Vicky Logan, she's a content creator on YouTube. Well, she's a content creator in general. She's on TikTok and Instagram as well. And she talked about how she experienced dysphoric milk ejection reflux. So it's basically just sudden and intense emotions that you experience when you have your letdown or a milk release. So letdown is basically what I just said, a milk release. It's when you start breastfeeding or pump and it's just that initial release of milk. Some women say that they feel like it's a tingly sensation. Some women don't feel anything at all, but it's just that initial release of milk. I did not experience that per se, but I can say that whenever I pumped, I did start to feel kind of like down. Like I just wasn't enjoying it. It felt very like I was glued to this machine, like I was a cow. But breastfeeding, I would say, is not that bad. I feel like it did feel like it was a little bit more bonding, but I personally couldn't exclusively breastfeed, especially since I am a working mom. And even if I'm not working, I feel like, you know, I don't want to be attached in that way to where I can't even step away for, you know, a few hours without worrying about when my baby's gonna eat. So I had to pump. I had to make sure that there was extra milk in the fridge or the freezer or whenever she got hungry. But overall, it was just a very tiring and frustrating journey. But again, stay the course if you want to stay the course, but be mindful of your mental health, because that is something that should be a priority as well. Because if you need to stop, then you need to stop, and you need to do what's best for you. Something that I forgot to mention with pumping is that you should have a pumping schedule. So I did say that babies eat between 8 to 12 times a day. So if you're going to exclusively pump, you should be pumping between 8 to 12 times a day. And in the first couple of months, that does include overnight. You should be pumping overnight to really get that milk supply up. But over time, you can decrease your pump sessions to start eliminating some overnight sessions. If you're going to breastfeed and pump, some of your sessions could be exclusively breastfeeding and some of them could be pumping. Some could be both. It really depends on if your baby's emptying your breast or not, or if you just want to have like that extra pump. But having a good solid pumping session will ensure that your body is responding to the demand. Again, it's supply and demand. So if you're not demanding, your body's not going to be supplying. So that's pretty much it for this video, but there's so much more that pertains to breastfeeding that I did not cover and cannot cover because I am not an expert. There are things again like latching, positioning, so the football position, the cradle position, the best kinds of pumps, so electric pumps, hand pumps, hands-free pumps, or even dealing with certain situations where a baby might have a tongue tie where, you know, that could be preventing them from getting enough milk when they're feeding. So there's so much more that it entails that you could do a lot more research on, or maybe I'll do a follow-up video if I have some more information to share. But if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like, share, and subscribe. And if you have any breastfeeding experiences that you'd like to share, I'd love to see it in the comments. Whether you're a new mom or an expecting mom who's, you know, planning on breastfeeding, I just want to hear what you guys have to say. So